What's happening, brother?
Not much, man. Yeah, absolutely, man. It's been a really, really good day. We actually had an opportunity to interview 13-year NFL All-Pro, University of Texas All-American, University of Texas Hall of Honor recipient, Butkus Award winner Nagurski. The list goes on and on and on. Mr. Derek Johnson. So really good interview with him. I can tell you he's excited about the state of the program. He loves Coach Sarkisian. But first and foremost, Derek Johnson was very, very humble. Very humble gentleman to let me and Jeremy take about 20 minutes of his time this morning. Talked about NIL, talked about his foundation and what he sees with the Texas program moving forward, which was really exciting.
Yeah, and if I could tell you how the connection kind of happened, I happened to fall into a Twitter space last night with Justice Finkley, incoming freshman, DeMarvion Overshone, and Anthony Cook, along with Brian Jones from CBS Sports and Derek Johnson. Was lucky enough to ask if I could ask a question. Got a question that I sent to DeMarvion to answer the question. I was basically asking Gary Patterson's impact on the football team coming up this year. And basically through that, got a hold of Derek. Derek said he'd be happy to come on. And like Clint said, it's an outstanding interview. We talk facets of the football team. We talk current landscape. He's been on, hosted a couple of these kids, or alumni have been there when these kids have been hosted over the last couple of weeks. And he's been able to talk to some of the incoming guys, some of the commits, and really, really is excited about the state of the program. But that'll air. Just got finished editing. So that will be out tomorrow, and very excited about that.
Awesome. Yeah. That'll definitely be out tomorrow. I think Aaron Murray, if we're not mistaken, I think the University of Georgia quarterback is actually the one that connected us to Derek Johnson via DMs and Twitter first, and then him and Jeremy kind of text messages back and forth, and then actually Derek calling Jeremy on his phone today to set that up. So just be looking for that tomorrow. And then I think currently on Tuesday of this week, we're actually going to have Nick Harris, recruiting analyst, national recruiting analyst from Rivals on the show. I'm not sure if that's going to be a recorded show yet or if that's going to be a live show with him on there yet. But we have him lined up for Tuesday, and then we have some other people lined up over the next couple of weeks. And maybe one of those things where Clint has to hop off because of school, and then Jeremy kind of hosts somebody else on here and does collaboration with someone else. So there's a lot of exciting things going on right now around this University of Texas program and Texas football talk. So kind of just bear with us over the next month or so as kind of things are kind of ebb and flow. But the flow is going in one way, and that's up. Obviously, after the commit of Arch Manning, there was Arch Madness, and it kept going for about 9 days and very little sleep because you had Sark after dark. Then you're waking up in the middle of the night, you're checking Twitter to see if anything happened. Biggest commit. I'm going to ask you this question. It's kind of just off, we didn't talk about this yet. Biggest commit outside of, I'd say the biggest commit outside of probably Jonte Cook and Arch Manning in this class so far.
For me, it's probably Jaden Chapman. You got the receiver in Ryan Niblett, who's the highest rated guy, along with Derek Williams, the safety out of Louisiana, which I love playmaking safeties. I was really, really enamored with the safety last year, playmaking safety. I'd like to got in the program. We didn't end up getting him. And I like Derek Williams a lot to that kid. Playmaking safety all over the field, can cover, impact at the point of when the ball arrives, hard hitter, just makes plays in the back end. So if I was going to say, and it's easy because he's the 5-star, right? He's the 38th ranked best player in the country. But I like the big uglies, and it starts with Jaden Chapman for me, the kid who's from Harker Heights, who's pretty close to where I live. And like I said, I hope to get a chance to see him multiple times this year as he plays ball. So I'll say, got to get that line fixed, and it starts with Jaden Chapman at this point.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Derek Williams, man, because that is an out of the blue commitment. I don't think anybody was really. Do I think Texas had a chance with obviously Terrence Joseph there, recruiting him into Louisiana, obviously signing, getting Arch Manning in the boat. I think one of the biggest things what I read is that the last time, I don't think in the modern era of recruiting, there's no class or no team outside of LSU that signed the top 2 out of 3 players in the state of Louisiana, the boot, So to me, that is huge to go into Louisiana and grab, the top, really 3 players, because I think someone's kind of in between Williams there in Arch and in Louisiana. But to me, that's huge to be able to go out of state, get someone in Louisiana, get them into the boat. And if you go watch his film, man, he is a dog. And it reminds me of, and it just slipped my mind, Hamilton from Notre Dame in size, in the way that space that they move in space reminds me of Hamilton at Notre Dame. Yeah, I've seen this pop up. Freddie Dubose Jr. He's a 2024 wide receiver. Freddie, if you're listening to this, I am actually probably less than a mile from Sherman High School. I was really sad when I found out you were transferring to Smithson Valley there. I was excited to go watch you there on Friday nights. Probably have to make the drive west, I guess northwest up to Smithson Valley to watch you play this year, but definitely excited to see you here and glad that you are in the chat tonight. Welcome. Definitely welcome. 2024 wide receiver, one of the top wide receivers in the country here in the San Antonio area.
Pure speed with Freddie Dubose, playmaker. Yeah, so I kind of threw those up there to because everybody who's watched us knows that every now and then we have malfunctions, whether it be electronic or cameras or microphones, and then you got the dogs to put up with. So they were well behaved up until the time we hit play, and then they go bonkers. So Jasmine's outside, Sam is inside. So hopefully we'll have a peaceful show the rest of the time we're on.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you want to talk about being these commits? What do you want to talk about?
Yeah.
I don't want everybody kind of run the show tonight. You know what I'm saying? Versus us really talking about every one of the commits and going through and talking about each and every one of them. I think it's maybe not who we have now, but who is currently out there that is named us in their top 2 or top 3 or top 7. I think we can go through that list. And I guess the number of people that are currently committed versus how many spots we're going to have in the class. And I know me and Jeremy kind of went through that today. Jeremy's got a breakdown, I think, there on his desk about current roster spots still available, if I'm not mistaken there. And we kind of gone through it. So if you want to go through what we think roster spots still available versus what's still out there on the board and kind of do that.
All right. So currently we have 17 commits on the board. By position, we say we're not going to take any quarterbacks. Arch Maney's the guy. We have already 6 guys on campus. We've covered that. So we think that no quarterbacks will be brought into the 23 class. Forgive me real quick, y'all.
He's about to have those dogs exit stage left there. There they went.
So the running back room, we got a running back, Trey Wisner, in this class, looking to get a second one. Probably the kid out of Florida is currently the pick. He's going to commit sometime in August. Cedric Baxter Jr. Be a great addition to the class. Again, you got Arch Manning, you got Jonte Cook, you got Ryan Niblett, you got receivers galore, you got weapons all over the place. I think he's a guy that probably will join this class. Wide receivers again, we talked about Ryan Niblett, we talked about Jonte Cook. Pretty set at receiver at this point. We do see him taking one. There's receivers still on the board. Jalen Hill, Jaquez Petway. You're talking about a kid from Longview. Heard rumors that Sark doesn't want anybody that runs less than a 4.35 40. I can't say that's true, but all these guys have speed. Every guy we talked about, whether it be Petway, Hale, Cook, a guy like Freddie Dubose who's in here right now. Speed. Then you're looking at linebackers and edges, right? So Samaje Burrell is committed to this class. Dylan Spencer's committed to this class, but you're looking at names like Anthony Hill, right? The stud out of Denton. You're looking at folks like forgive me,
Terry Gillette,
scroll down.
Colton
Bossick. Go ahead.
Braylon Shelby. Those are your defensive end linebacker spots that you're going to probably try to fill in this class. As you see right now, when I started going really through Horns 247's offers versus current really numbers that may be available in this class, probably sit somewhere between 26 and 29. We probably have less than 15 guys that we're probably going all in on at this point if you're looking at that board. Now, there may be some names or a couple of names that popped up this week, one being an offensive tackle offensive tackle out of, I believe, out of Illinois in Miles McVay. So there are offers still going out. I think that Texas says, hey, at this particular point, let's go ahead and shoot our shot if we can, and see if there's, that relationship could be built between now and obviously signing day. So if they're sending offers out for offensive linemen or offensive tackles, that's still one position that they want to get somebody at. So in another
when you talked about Miles,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, when you talked about Miles McVay, 6'6", 358 pounds, right? So he's another one of those big bodies, 6'6", 358 pounds out of East St. Louis, Missouri. You're right, East St. Louis, Illinois. So just a beast.
Yeah. So go ahead, Jeremy. You continue on with your list there.
Yeah. So secondary, right? So 2 corners and 1 safety is what we thought. 1 offensive lineman and a couple of defensive tackles. So the safeties that we currently have, the kid out of I'm kind of distracted. The kid out of Louisiana, Derek Williams. But then you got cornerbacks like Javian Tobiano. You have Malik Muhammad still on the board. You have athletes like Mikael Harrison-Pilot to play both sides of the ball. And then when you're talking about defensive tackles, you're talking about David Hicks. You're talking about Sevier Mitchell. You're talking about these bigger guys. And when I tweeted out today about Sevier Mitchell, you're talking about 335 pounds. He's played varsity ball since he was a freshman. Run stuffer, right? So clogging, playing that one technique, clogging up, taking both the guard and the center is exactly what you want in PK's defense. So big body, love to have him. I think he's going to commit on Sunday evening about 6 o'clock. But yeah, so that's how we see it. There's 17 in the class. If the breakdown is the way we see it, with 1 running back, 1 receiver, 4 linebackers / edge, 2 corners, 1 safety, and then 2 defensive tackles, that takes you up to 28 or 29. Don't know if those scholarships are available, if that's the number. But if our projections are correct, you're looking at probably 28 scholarships for this class. But again, attrition is going to kind of drive that as well.
Yeah. Actually, if you go back and look at, I think it was Sevier Mitchell's page on 247. He was actually a 2019, I want to say his freshman year, if I'm not mistaken. Hopefully my math's right. He was actually a Max Preps All-American as a offensive lineman. So some particular point, he was playing offensive line. He was Max Preps, All-American, and then he decided he wanted to go to the defensive side of the board or defensive side of the ball. But definitely go look at his video, his film. It's crazy because somebody that big, he has some lateral movement. Hell, he had an interception at one particular point. He dropped back in space, reached up and grabbed the interception. He wasn't running it too fast back to the end zone, but he's definitely got some athletic ability for that size. It's 6'5", 335 pounds, man. He's going to be, his number one job is going to be take on blocks, man, and be a run stuffer in anybody's defense.
Wholeheartedly agree, D-Train. I feel the young people who've never seen Texas recruit like this. Again, last show we talked about the Mac Brown era. Probably when you're talking about coast to coast, the number of 5 stars that you're able to could get in this class right now. You're at 3, could get up to 5 or 6 if the chips fall right, and that's unprecedented. There's only generally 30 consensus 5-star recruits in the country. So if you're able to grab 5 or 6 of them, which is probably the best case scenario for this class, you're sitting pretty. But the big, massive humans, that's it, man. Like, I think the skill positions on both sides of the ball are pretty solidified. I think we got dogs in the secondary. I think we got young guys they can play back there if you rush the passer and stop the run, which is simplistic football, right? If you stop the run and give the quarterback less time, you're going to play pretty good defense. And talking to Derek Johnson today, that's what he said, the same thing. And you'll hear that when this video comes out, is he's interested to watch this defense work with the guys they brought in the 22 class, with the kind of athletes they're bringing in the 23 class. We scored 44 points a game last year, or average 44 points a game. Where does this defense go? Where's that next step that they're able to take under Pete Kwiatkowski? And basically the question that drove that was talking about Gary Patterson and his influence in the defense. So, yeah, it starts up front. So big, massive humans on both sides of the ball. Totally agree.
Yeah, I know some. There was some talk about, well, some of these guys are 3 stars, man. But evaluations matter, man. Not so much stars on recruiting. Obviously, when you're looking at the recruiting numbers, most all of their recruiting site base their evaluations on where they believe people are going to go in what rounds in the NFL draft. So you're talking about 4 years down the road. And I think Texas has done it right, because I think unless you're at Georgia, unless you're in Alabama that has had success year after year after year, Clemson's, the Ohio States, it's gonna be really hard to stack talent on top of talent on top of talent. 5-star player on top of 5-star player, because these players want to play right away. You see it. You can see it now in some staffs, some teams having a hard time recruit because they stacked some of their classes. But I think Kyle Flood's done it right. You go out and get 2 5-stars in an inline, interior offensive lineman in Devin Campbell, and you go out there and you get an offensive tackle in Kelvin Banks and in Hudson, and the list goes on and on and on with these guys that you brought in this last class, which would have been the number 1 offensive line class in the country. But then you bring guys in that may not be at the level that Devin Campbell or Kelvin Banks are going to be coming out of high school, but you allow these individuals to be able to grow and develop, knowing that there's a good chance as they develop and grow, they're going to, get to the level of the Kelvin Banks and Devin Campbells. Plus it creates, you're talking about, 12, 13, well, I don't know how many guys we've signed so far between both, classes, but that depth is what they've been trying to do. Hell, we couldn't even run a spring game because we didn't have enough offensive linemen to be able to play. You got a thought on that too as well, Jeremy?
Well, I would just tell guys, especially on the offensive line, go back and look at Texas history with 5-star recruit offensive linemen and how unsuccessful they've been. Not to say I wouldn't take 5 stars over 3 stars, but and I think Devon Campbell and Kelvin Banks are going to work out. I think they're going to play great. But you talk about Sam Cosby and Connor Williams, lower rated guys who came to the program. They're developmental. Those guys who are a little undersized and added strength. A lot of the developmental guys that Coach Flood's bringing in are 6'6", 335 pounds. So it's kind of like a difference in philosophy. I remember bringing in converted tight ends like Reese Moore, who weighed 265 pounds out of high school, and said, hey, we're going to put 30 pounds of muscle on him and turn him into an offensive lineman. Well, that didn't happen. He was very highly rated. So it's just a different philosophy. He wants them with the size and then put them in a strength and conditioning program to add muscle with the frame already being there. But yeah, I totally agree with you. Offensive line is one of those positions that it's hard to classify and it's hard to rate because a lot of these skill position guys have an opportunity to go to 7-on-7. Well, who's missing from the 7-on-7? It's your offensive and defensive lineman. So they get camps to show what they got. But other than that, they don't have the opportunities of guys that play the skill positions. I'll just put it at that. But I really like his philosophy. I really like him bringing in the big nasties that the SEC generally recruits and see where it goes. Because like you said, last year was a 5-star heavy offensive line class. This year, a little bit more probably developmental. But you've seen guys like Hayden Connor come in and get playing time early. You've seen guys like Andre Carrick get playing time as a freshman. Anything can happen. Just get them in the weight room, see how they pick up the playbook, and see how they perform is the main thing.
It's kind of the same thing that Byron Murphy, when Byron Murphy was going through the recruiting process there at DeSoto, he was, on the defensive line with, what was it, Shamar Turner. And Shamar Turner was a 5-star that obviously committed to Texas A&M. But Byron Murphy has probably been the guy that Steve Sarkisian talks about the most in every press conference he's ever done. To me, they looked at the evaluation of Byron Murphy, and he's not your typical 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" defensive lineman. He's short, squatty, stocky guy that has the ability to get low. And if he gets your hands on you, he's got that power. But again, we talk about rankings a lot. Yeah, it's nice. You're probably not going to get the number 1 recruiting class in the country based on what you're seeing now, based on a composite score, because of some of the some of the stars or looking at the stars. That's okay, man. As long as you're filling out those positions and needs, I think that's more important than actually getting the number one class in the country.
And I think that's what you do. Is if you go across your big board and you project your starters on both sides, or your two deep on both sides, and you take those composite, and they're not doing this, but if you take those composite scores or those athletes that you need to play early because you do have a lack of depth or a lack of talent in a certain position, you're going to recruit at that position. Now what's happening is they're heavy at receiver. We've talked about it, with the Jai Hall coming in, Isaiah Nair coming in, Whittington already here, Xavier Worthy, the best receiver on the football team, being a sophomore. Like, they have depth at receiver, but it doesn't stop them from going out and getting guys like Jonte Cook and Ryan Niblett and those guys. And the young man, I keep forgetting his name, the one that committed last week, the taller receiver out of Houston, but they keep bringing those weapons in. Thank you. They keep bringing those weapons in because they got Quinn Ewers as a quarterback currently on the roster. They got Hudson Card currently on the roster, and they got Arch Manning on the way. So receivers and skill position guys are going to want to play with those guys. So that I don't see them having a difficult time recruiting the skill positions. It's going to be who is going to back up how do you see your front five on your offensive and defensive line, or front four on the defensive line, in your starting five, and then how do you supplement with those guys? Where do you need to grab a guy in 23 versus 24 that you see, because they're looking down the road too. They know what in the state of Texas, and it's gone across the map, right? They're not recruiting Texas anymore. They're going to New Jersey. They're going to Louisiana. They're headed out to California, Arizona, Florida to grab these players.
Alabama, Mississippi.
Yeah, exactly. Have an idea of where the strengths are in the upcoming recruiting class, and saying, hey, I don't need to fill this scholarship this year. I think I got a good opportunity, like a guy like Freddie Dubose. Hey, I might not take a receiver in the 23 class because I got a good idea that I can get Freddie Dubose in the 24 class. Not saying that's happening, but I think that's something that the player personnel director has to know is what's the strengths of each class, both in the state of Texas and across the nation, to fill out my roster the best. And that's why you have guys for junior days and recruit them early and offer them their sophomore year, so you could try to develop that roster that way.
No, to me, you've established, like you said, a player personnel department. You know what I'm saying? Where you have probably multiple individuals that are out there looking at film, looking at tape for each position. So they know exactly what they have. But it's become really the NFL model of 85 scholarships is what you have, and how do you recruit high school seniors versus how do you treat the transfer portal, which would be considered open free agency without a salary cap. You know what I'm saying? So it's just a big model. I actually want to go back to the previous comment that we had up there, Jeremy, if you could find that, because I think it's important to talk about this, because I think he hit the nail on the head when it comes to it's refreshing to have a legit coaching staff that seems to have a collective vision and direction. Unification. Being unified as one is absolutely important. And I think me and Jeremy were on that Spaces last night. And Trevor Gooseby, offensive tackle, Adam Melissa, recently committed to Texas this week. His dad, it was funny because he was talking, and I guess him and Brian Jones, play for University of Texas, teammates with the New Orleans Saints. And it was refreshing to hear what he had to say, because he honestly got on there. He got on there not to talk about his son being committed to the University of Texas. He got on there to talk about how they were treated and what the energy level is. And again, this is a guy that was flipped from TCU, that had already committed to TCU and then flipped from TCU to Texas. And he got on there and he said the energy level in Austin is different right now. It is different. And this is coming from someone that played in the NFL, that has probably been on multiple, college visits. But he said the way that it was hosted and the conversation, I guess Derek Johnson was probably one of the guys that hosted, but he was also, I think he was speaking. He had a speaking engagement with the players there. But I think that's what's most important about all this is the how, from President Hartzell on down to Chris Del Conte to Steve Sarkisian, in allowing, in Chris Del Conte allowing Steve Sarkisian to create a model that's probably similar to what they had at Alabama, bringing in, a former head coach in Gary Patterson. That's what fixes programs. I have no doubt that, that Kyle Flood can develop linemen. I have no doubt that he can, because he showed that he can on multiple stops. And some people look at him as probably one of the top 5 offensive line coaches there. I have no doubt that Terry Joseph can develop, safeties. He did it at Notre Dame and had probably one of the highest, Hamilton was, came out in the first round, I think top 10 of the first round. That's somebody he actually went out and evaluated, and he was the primary recruiter for with Notre Dame. So I think this guy, I think this coaching staff has the unity of all, the admin, which is number one. Number two, I think they can develop. I think it just comes down to timing. How long does it take to develop and turn over your roster and to become your roster? That it's your guys, and how do you, once you develop them, how do you get them to play on Saturdays?
And two things, I think that goes back to having those hard discussions. Sark's turned over the roster at least 60 to 70% at this point, if we go back and look. And it's having those hard discussions after spring ball or after the season, saying, hey, man, like, I don't think you have a place to play here. Like, if you want to play football, you might have to transfer, because we're looking to bring guys in who can make an impact. And Derek Johnson kind of said, going the other way, I asked him about the inclusion of alumni and former players, and he said the same thing. The energy in Austin right now is different. You guys will hear that in the interview once we release it tomorrow, because you've always seen Texas Exes and former players and NFL stars come back to the university. And so you want to ask what's the pulse of the team, what's the pulse of the environment around Austin? You're seeing all this recruiting momentum. The 22 class was phenomenal, based upon Sark's first year. That's his first true recruiting class. You feel like the trajectory of the program is definitely heading in the right direction. Is that what you're seeing? He said absolutely it's the same thing. Everything that you're hearing, everything that you're seeing is exactly how it feels. And I didn't watch the interview, but I read a quote from Connor Stroh's interview with Nino's Corner. And they said the same thing. The whole recruiting staff and coaching staff met them when they got out of the car, and it was a total family affair. It wasn't just Kyle Flood and some assistant offensive line coach. It was the whole team and the whole recruiting staff welcoming them, telling them they want them to be a part of this football team, and that's how programs get off the ground, get developed. And like you said, I have no question that Bo Davis can coach, Kyle Flood can coach, Terry Joseph can coach. It's just, like you said, timing and getting these guys headed in that right direction, flipping this roster to be able to compete for championships.
Yeah, Kobe Harris, he's been watching the show for a long time, and obviously we are from obviously the sunny South Dallas area, Southwest Dallas, in DeSoto. That's where me and Jeremy were really born and raised. So he was talking about, Clint, Jeremy both said we had to get into DeSoto, Lancaster, Duncanville area. That's to include, like I just said, sunny South Dallas in South Oak Cliff and those schools. South Oak Cliff is a monster. If you go look at their roster, they probably have to have one of the best defenses in the country this year in high school football. If you go look at their secondary alone, and Javion Thomas, Malik Muhammad, I think there's another. I think Malik's cousin as well is another guy that's just that is a Power 5 guy. That defense, Billy Walton, that defense is something else. And if you have an opportunity to go back and watch the state championship game, that is something that hasn't happened. I think 1957 was the last time that a Dallas ISD school won a state championship in the state of Texas, which is huge. But yeah, that area, and I'm not just going to leave it to that area. You have to win Houston and you have to win Dallas. You have to. Here in the state of Texas, you got to win Houston and you have to win Dallas if you're going to have a successful recruiting class with in-state guys. And it's not taking anything away from the San Antonio guys, because there's guys out there. Colton Thompson that plays at Smith Valley's a commit to Texas A&M. If you go out to Brandeis, There's a quarterback out there in the 2024 class that and damn, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, which is bad because we do a lot of DMs. J.C. Evans. Go look at J.C. Evans out of Brandeis. So San Antonio's got some guys. Austin, obviously, Central Texas has done really good. You can't get away from Beast Texas, but you really have to sew up Houston and Dallas in each recruiting class if you want these mid 4-stars to high 5-star guys. So,
wholeheartedly agree. If we go down and list the guys that are already committed, of course, you got Archers from Louisiana, and that's something else. Is Terry Joseph's ability to get in Louisiana, and AJ Milwee and the work that he did on Arch Manning. Arch Manning coming here is, helped us with Derek Williams. It's going to help us with, I think, a couple more commits out of Louisiana. But talking about Jonte from DeSoto, Ryan Nibbles from Houston, Jamel Johnson, Arlington, might as well be Dallas-Fort Worth, Dylan Spencer from Houston, Samadri Burrell from Fort Worth, Jonah Wilson from Houston, Trey Wisner from DeSoto, Connor Stroh from Frisco, Melissa, Dallas. They're all Dallas and Houston recruits with a little bit of Central Texas, a little bit of Louisiana, and then jumped out to Hawaii and California for a couple of more. But
yeah. And I'll let you talk about this because you were stationed in Hawaii. So Jeremy kind of knows the island really well. Me and him were actually having a conversation about Leona LaFau. And I probably messed his name up, and I'll let Jeremy kind of talk through some of the high schools not high schools and obviously what they have here and what high school he's coming from. So talk a little bit about Leona LaFau, Jeremy.
So generally in Hawaii, Leona LaFau, and you said it perfectly. He comes from Kahuku High School, which is on the North Shore. It's the most beautiful place you've ever been. If you've ever been to the North Shore of Oahu, you understand that. But generally with Kahuku, them and maybe one other public school have the opportunity to compete for championships because it's generally owned by Punahou and St. Louis. You'll know that Marcus Mariota and a lot of the Hawaiian kids who make it big, Timmy Chang, generally come from Punahou or St. Louis. St. Louis is an all-boys school in Honolulu. But generally you got Kahuku and one of those private schools playing for a state championship every year. And these guys are different, man. Like, talking about playing with tenacity. If you haven't watched his commitment video, and I really, really enjoyed the Samoan country music, the guy's name is the Cowboy. So basically the commitment video, he's talking about his family and his love for Hawaii. And at the end, the cannon goes off, the Longhorn flag goes up, and it's a country music song sung by a Samoan called the Cowboy. And it's absolutely phenomenal video. But these guys are like I said, they're beasts. And he's coming in at 210 pounds, but he hits like a freight train with no regard for his body whatsoever. Yes, I love Leona LaFau. I love the kids of Hawaii. I think they play a different brand of football. They are true warriors now out there and just get after it. And I think we're really, really, really going to enjoy having him on our football team.
I think the biggest thing for us in this scenario is that you stole a defensive player from the University of Utah. And if those guys are evaluating talent, I'm always looking, at these defensive offers that we have, and did Utah, evaluate them and offer them? Because anytime you steal a defensive player, from the University of Utah, they're probably going to be successful because there's not evaluation that those guys do that usually doesn't end up well. So definitely excited about that. And definitely excited to be able to reach out further than California to the islands and grab someone. I think they said this is the first time that Texas has had a commit from the islands.
I can remember.
I think it's forever. I think I heard it was forever. So to reach out to the islands and create a nice reach out to the islands to get guys to Texas is definitely big.
It's really cool. If you wouldn't mind, I threw this up here real quick. There's 101 folks in here right now. If you would hit that like button, we really appreciate it. If you would hit that subscribe button. If you're not subscribed to our channel, please subscribe to our channel. Like Clint said, we've been off for 4 months. He's finishing up his master's in education, trying to get a teacher's certificate so he can go back and teach and impact young lives and maybe find a coaching job somewhere in his near future. So we haven't been able to do as many shows as we'd like to do. And of course, I was in military training for about 3 months out in California. But now we're back. You saw our right after the many commitment video last week. We got this one today. Again, we had Derek Johnson. We interviewed Derek Johnson, the all-everything linebacker. Clint talked about his accolades earlier. Hall of Honor recipient, two-time All-American, 13-year pro. We'll have his interview.
Four-time Pro Bowler.
Four-time Pro Bowler.
Nagurski, Butkus, the list goes on and on and on. So when Jeremy, it's funny because Jeremy he was hosting the show and he obviously does the introduction. When we brought him onto the show, and you'll see it tomorrow, it's like, damn, superlative after superlative after superlative after superlative. It's like, damn, you can't say enough. But go ahead, Jeremy. Just going through shows, and then we have one lined up for Tuesday night with Nick Harris from Rivals, their national recruiting analyst there. Probably get a big outlook on what recruiting looks like from a national standpoint and what Texas looks like on a national standpoint versus just the individual box that we may live in as Texas content creators.
Because somebody wrote that a little bit earlier. You could tell how well Texas is doing this recruiting cycle because of all the animosity you get from the other fan bases. But yeah, it'll be interesting. Although Nick used to work for Texas exclusively, now that he's doing the total national landscape, it'd be interesting to see how he sees it from that other lens and what he sees for the rest of this recruiting class. Because again, he's not focused just on Texas, but he has a good eye of what's out there and what's available across the nation and what may be available for the rest of the 23 class. So, it should be good.
Let's see what other comments we got up here. What else you got up here, Jeremy? Let me see.
The kid out of Lehigh, Utah, another Samoan backer, a little bit heavier. He walks around, I think, 6'1", 230, Tasuli Akana from Lehigh, Utah. Absolute beast, monster. Texas had him in a couple of times, if I'm not mistaken, over the summer last fall to visit. So he's another guy. But I think their eyes are on Anthony Hill. I think their eyes are on Bredlin Shelby. I think in-state recruiting at the linebacker position is pretty much where we're headed for the rest of this recruiting cycle. But again, you're going to continue to throw out offers to kids who you think can find a spot. Or play on your football team and see where it happens, see where it lays in December.
All right, so we got a question here. Who is next? Malik Muhammad and Anthony Hill. It's neither one of these guys. Is on the next chart. Next chart's probably going to be if you're reading insider information from Rivals or 247 or Inside Texas and seeing all these crystal balls pop up. Next guy's probably going to be Sevier Mitchell out of New Jersey, which is a believe it or not, a head-to-head win, be a head-to-head win against not only Texas A&M, but Georgia. Big head-to-head win there. Sevier Mitchell, I think he's going to announce his commitment on Sunday on CBS Sports. So we'll kind of see where that goes. I don't want to say it's 100% in because you never know, when you're doing recruiting, somebody can change their mind last minute, but it does sound like it is Texas right now.
Yeah, nephew's on it.
Yeah, so my son is in here. Yeah. He actually lives up in the Salt Lake City area, so he can tell us all of the. He can actually go out there and do some, watch some guys in the Utah area and come back and feed us information on Friday nights for the show for guys that we're interested in or Texas offers. Who's your next after Sevier Mitchell, man? You want to go down that list of guys we got and talk about percentages? Or no?
Yeah, it's chicken scratch. Up until today, so we kind of, like we said a little bit earlier, we kind of talked about the 17 that we do have. We talked about getting a 28 or 29, and then we talked about our guys that we felt like would find a spot on this roster or not find a spot on this roster and kind of left a percentage. And I'll start with Anthony Hill. It's down to two teams. It's Texas A&M, and me and Clint came up with 50% on Anthony Hill. It's a coin flip. It's a coin flip. You feel like you got a ton of momentum, but you had some ground to make up. At this point, I think being the last person that he's talking about, and again, you got Jonte Cook working on him. You got the guys in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex working on him. You do have that Denton connection. You saw the picture with him and Austin Jordan, Jatavian Sanders together. 50% on Hill. Cedric Baxter, we had the running back out of Florida. We have him at 80% Texas. Colton Bossick, again, a guy, Westlake guy, teammate of Connor Robertson, teammate of Ethan Burke, right there in the hometown, but haven't heard much on him. We got Colton Bossick at 30%. And feel free to drop your percentages in the comment box. If you think we're off, please let us know. Sevier Mitchell, again, bet head-to-head with Georgia A&M, going to commit Sunday, 6 o'clock, CBS Sports Network. We got him at 70%, Texas. Malik Muhammad, 75% Texas. Again, you got his teammate Billy Wilson on the football team. Muhammad originally started playing football at DeSoto, transferred to IMG Academy. South Oak Cliff is actually his third high school football team, to my recollection. But we got him at 75%, just with all the connections. He's been there recently. We really feel like Texas is going to win this recruiting battle. The guy we have a question mark for is Javian Toviano, a top 30 player in the country. We have no idea where we sit with this recruitment. We know he's been to campus 3 or 4 times in the last year, but we have heard absolutely nothing out of Javian Toviano, not positive nor negative. I'm saving David Hicks for last. I see David Hicks. He's actually the first guy that I have on the list. Braylon Shelby out of Friendswood. Got to get in Friendswood. They say he's the best athlete to come out of Friendswood in the last decade. Again, that Houston connection you were talking about a little bit early, we have him at 50%. Darian Gillette, the kid out of Marlin. Again, he has a teammate on the team that just committed last year, the 2022 class. Central Texas guy, a guy I would like to see play a couple times this year. We got him 70% to Texas. David Hicks. We did this early this morning before our interview with Derek Johnson, just kind of kill some time. And really didn't feel like Texas was a part of this recruiting battle. He dropped the top 7 today. Texas was a part of that. He says he's going to give Texas a visit on January 3rd before he decides to make a decision. This morning I had it at 10%. I would say right now, but the guys that we're competing against, I would up that to probably 30% for David Hicks at this point. But again, you're competing with 6 other programs. All of those are top-level schools, and he hasn't been on Texas for a long, long time. So we probably got some making up to do with that recruitment as well. But yeah, that's pretty much our top 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we talked about Hill and Petway, the 2 receivers, the one from Lamb Creek and the one from Longview. Really don't have an idea of where their recruitment is at this point. If anybody else in the comments does know, please share that with us. But that's the group that we see having an opportunity to be a part of this 23 class at this point. We had this discussion last week.
We did have this discussion last week. If you get one Hill, Hicks, Toviano, who are you taking? I think Jeremy went with Hill, right? Or no, you went with Hicks.
I did.
You went with Hicks.
I did
right?
go with Hicks.
I did go with Hicks. And I went with Hill. He went with Hicks. I went with Hill because I think currently right now, linebacker is probably the biggest need moving forward. And I think you need an SEC linebacker, not SEC type linebacker. And I think Hill is that SEC type linebacker that you're going to need for the future. Go ahead, Jeremy.
And again, we talked about depth, right? You have Murphy. You have some young guys in that interior defensive line. But Derek Johnson and you kind of worked on me over the last day on Anthony Hill, and I've watched him. Like I said, I've watched Denton Ryan put 5 guys down the line of scrimmage to eat up every blocker and just let him do his thing. He is a very talented football player. But I just think in Pete Witkowski's scheme and what I saw last year, and again, this guy, if he does commit, is not going to be here next year. He won't be here to the following year. And how much impact is it going to make as a freshman? Generally, if you're a top 10 player in the country, you're probably going to start. But I just I don't know. I just feel like the need is greater in that interior defensive line at this point. That's where I see it.
Yeah. There are 106 people in here currently right now watching. We have 54 likes. It looks like if you wouldn't mind, please hit that like button. We definitely appreciate it. Go ahead, Jeremy.
And this is where he hit the nail right on the head. Hicks doing his job would allow Hill to do his job. Like again, if the guard center combo can't get to the linebackers are able to work, then it's the same thing. Just like if the edges and the interior pass rush can get to the quarterback, then that helps out the corners and the safeties. It's all linchpin, and it all works together. And I totally agree. I just think the defensive line has the potential to make the linebackers better. So that's why I would take Hicks. But I wouldn't mind having a shutdown corner either.
Absolutely not. You would love to have all three of these guys. You know what I'm saying? And it's a possibility. I would put it at almost 66% right now. If I had to choose and say, okay, where were we between Hill, Hicks, and Taviano? What does it look like? A percentage that we land? All three. I would probably have to go maybe 33%. If we land two, I'd probably go 66%. At least one of these guys, 100%. That's where I would land at. But you definitely need a shutdown corner. But where I see right now on the Texas side of the defense side of the ball for Texas that you've done really good. You have some, Jalen Gilmore came in and was given, Deshaun Jameson all he wanted in the spring as a freshman. So I think you got the cornerbacks in the room, transfers from Ohio State that are going to be around there for a while. So I don't think cornerback is as big as need is defensive line, but to me, linebacker is the biggest need right now out of all three of those positions.
Yeah, and that's Steven's line from Fanatic perspective, the attendance taking, but we do appreciate it if everybody who comes in to watch our show does like our show and shows that with the like button, and subscribe if you haven't. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. This is what makes the show go is really the chat, questions. So if you got questions, please throw them up there. We'll do our best to answer them. We try to do it without burnt orange glasses. I definitely want to be. I think we want to be real with you. And if we think that a guy is not going to choose Texas, I'll sit up here and tell you that I think he's probably here. He's probably going to go somewhere else. And but yeah, please. This is what makes the show go, and so we definitely appreciate him. Petway is, I think, Petway picking between Texas and Oklahoma sometime next week. Right now, sounds like insiders have him going to Oklahoma. But like anything could change, on a moment's dime, and then all of a sudden he's, committing to the good guys down south. So, Jordan Renault out of where's he at? Central Texas, Tyler, right? Yeah. Haven't heard much about him, reading boards and stuff. I know if you would have went back to the spring, I think you were hearing some things about Jordan Renault. Don't currently know what his status is or what schools he's really looking at. As guys kind of start falling off and you don't really hear much talk about him, you kind of go on to the next guy. So really don't know much about Jordan Renault, but he's a highly ranked defensive lineman in the state of Texas. So he's definitely I'm assuming he's on somebody's board as a take if that's what he decides to do.
Yeah, he's out of Tyler Legacy. 86th best player in the country. Again, yeah, you heard about him in the spring, and you never know what it is. If the kid just turned off by the school or the school wants to go in a different direction. But yeah, it's kind of gone quiet with him on that front.
All right, we got a question here from Carmon. All right, who starts QB1? This is a August conversation. Hopefully, August conversation. This is what I want. I'm not gonna tell you who I think starts right now for the University of Texas on September 3rd against University of Louisiana Monroe. This is what I will tell you. I hope that Steve Sarkisian names a quarterback within the first couple of weeks of fall camp. I think that's absolutely important. I don't think this thing needs to linger on, and we're still trying to figure out who's going to start leading up to week one. I think Steve Sarkisian, this is just my thought process. I think Steve Sarkisian needs to name a number one quarterback within the first couple of weeks of fall camp so that every other player can rally around that one leader.
I don't know, man. Like, it seems like the fan base has spoken. Players on the team has spoken. I think it's Quinn's job. I think what you saw, that arm talent that you saw in that bomb to Isaiah Nair is what fans want to see. And I think he's definitely got the highest upside out of the two. I think you need to play him, or like if you sit him, like Hudson Card and Casey Thompson went back and forth last year. You don't want that scenario. I totally agree with you. You want to name Quinn the starter as early as you possibly can. Let it be his football team and just let him roll 100%. Like as we get closer to the season, we start talking about the current roster and our depth chart and how we see it playing out. We'll really get into the eaches and why we believe a certain way, but there's got to be something to it when the fan base seems like they are pulling in the same direction. The players on the football team are pulling in the same direction. I think it's Quinn Ewers' job.
This is actually a good question. I think J-Bo is an actual Aggie here. You knocked it off there. J-Bo is an actual. I think he's a Texas A&M guy. If I'm not mistaken, J-Bo is back. If I'm not mistaken, and I apologize if you're not. He said, "Don't want to be a downer, but who the hell is going to block Will Anderson?" I don't think anybody in college football at any offensive tackle can block Will Anderson. I think it's going to take a chip from the running back. You're going to have to play 12 personnel with the tight ends. You're going to have an offensive tackle. There's going to be a lot of chipping. That's how you're going to affect the pass rush. But one-on-one, I don't think there's anybody in the country, and I may be mistaken. There may be some offensive tackles, maybe one or two offensive tackles out there that can take Will Anderson one-on-one. So we'll see how that works itself out. That's not my biggest concern. It's that if you're chipping Will Anderson, you got another defensive end on the other side that's not being chipped. How do you deal with that person as well? So that's a conversation as we lead up to the Alabama game on September 10th that I don't know if we're going to have an answer for, to be honest with you. That Alabama defense is literally maybe one of the best defenses Saban's had in his entire time at Alabama.
And J-Bo's not an Aggie.
Okay.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, we had a guy named J-Bo. Right?
Don the best or something like that.
Yeah. So I apologize about J-Bo, but we had a troll on here by the same name. So I apologize about that. Definitely don't want to call you an Aggie if you're not an Aggie, man. Hook 'em. I apologize. Burn orange all the way. What you got? I'm sorry. I think we had the same one. No, I think he said Sark will slow down Anderson down through his play calling. It's hard.
You have to run
it's difficult. It's difficult when you have someone like that can impact a football game. Do I think Steve Sarkisian? Do I know he knows the Alabama ins and outs of scheme wise? Absolutely. But I also think that currently what dang it, can't think now. Help me out.
I tell you, if we're talking. Hang on, real quick. Okay. So if we're talking about Will Anderson's ability to sack the quarterback, right? He had over 20 sacks last year in 14 games. You run the football at him. That's what you do. You tire him out. You run the football at him heavy, and you try to get him off his pins. You gotta have him guessing, right? He can't rush up the field if you got Bijan running through the C gap. You know what I mean? Running around him. So that's the best way to go at him. You have to run the football at him. And then when you're in obvious passing situations, you got to help him, whether it be a tight end or Roschon Johnson chipping him or Bijan Robinson chipping him. That's the game plan. If you can, like you say, get the ball out of your hands quickly with your RPO stuff. And if you have to, if he's on the right side, you roll left, you move the pocket. That's the way you stop a pass rusher. Is run the football at him on running downs to beat him up, and then help him on obvious passing downs, and then roll the pocket away from him if you have to.
RPO game and throw it behind him on quick slants. And go back to Quinn Ewers. Everybody needs to understand that there's going to be some growing pains with that. You know what I'm saying? He's a gunslinger. You know what I'm saying? And he's going to try to fit the ball into some windows that he may not be able to fit it into. So you're going to have to take with the good with the bad, and I think there'll be more good than bad. But it's something that you got to look out as a gunslinger there. Do you see two freshmen starting on the offensive line?
No.
Not starting?
Nope.
Game one?
Nope.
During the season at any point?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And we know who they are. It's either Kelvin Banks or Devon Campbell in my mind. But Cole Hudson got a lot of run in the spring game. He made a good account for himself. think you could see one of them start. If I had my projection, it'd probably be Banks. At some point during the season, you probably will see Devin Campbell. And again, this is just projections. Like, we haven't even started fall camp. You may see Devin Campbell and Kelvin Banks starting a football game together. And I have no idea. I keep looking at this. Go ahead. Answer.
No, I think it's possible. I think it's possible to see these guys start. I think it's possible to see two guys starting game one against University of Louisiana Monroe. I really do, because there's some guys that have been in the program for multiple years that haven't showed marked improvement. So if I'm Kyle Flood, and I've tried my best to get you to understand that you have to show improvement to be a starter on my football team, I think it's a possibility if Kelvin Banks, Cole Hudson, Devin Campbell, the list goes on and on. If they come in and they do what they have to and learn the playbook, and they are the most dominant, offensive lineman that Texas has against Texas's defensive line, you got to start them. I don't think it's a question.
Neto, Malik, they're all good football players.
They're good, man. Yeah, I think it's opportunity. I think it's an opportunity. I think that Kyle Flood brought those guys in to either make the guys, ahead of them, play better. And if they don't play, you got big Cam Williams that'll lean on you at 6'8", 360 pounds.
There's seven of them.
Yes.
There's seven of them. Connor Robertson, there's seven of them, right?
I think the answer is yes.
They brought them in for a reason. Now, do I think they'll start game one against Louisiana Monroe? Two of them, I don't. This is because of the experience. I get what you're saying, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. And that's why they went out and got 7 offensive linemen, because they saw where this position group was and they needed to improve it. I just can't bring myself to think that we got two starters against ULA Monroe, because the week after that we got Alabama, and I'm not saying we're intimidated about Alabama. We're gonna show up and we're gonna play ball, but it's gonna be awfully tough, regardless. It's going to be a tough matchup, regardless if you had that senior, junior, upperclassman laid line that you had last year starting. It's going to be tough if you have to start 2 freshmen. But it's Alabama, So, like you said, let the best 5 get out there, regardless of classification, and we'll see where it takes us. I just don't see it game one. Do I see it by the end of the year? Absolutely, I do.
But I think the problem with that is that with offensive linemen, the more they play together, the better they get. So if I know that these are my best 5 that I need to play and get snaps with, actual offense, real snaps with them at the beginning of the season versus, now 3, I've changed up the offensive line. They're getting snaps in practice, but it's not the same as real game snaps. You're not communicating like you are in a real game, like you are in practice. So to me, I think it comes down to real game snaps and communication and allowing these guys to play is one. If that's who that's who you feel at the end of the year is going to be your best 5. I think it's better to start them at the beginning of the year versus changing them out week 3 after Alabama going into Big 12 play.
Yeah, my hunch is 3 to 4, and that's why I accidentally popped up Hicks answer before or to Robert's question. This is his answer, and I agree with him. I think the 4 to me that have an opportunity are Neto. You're talking about Devon Campbell, you're talking about Kelvin Banks, and you're talking about Cole Hudson. I think Robertson's a little undersized. Needs a little bit of time. He's a center. He's going to take a little bit of time to develop. Jake Majors is young and plays ball pretty well. I think it could be. I think it's 4, and I think it's the 4 that I named.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's 4 too. But again, going back and looking at this recruiting class, this 2023 recruiting class. That allows you to go in. That's why it allows you to go in and get a Connor Stroh that's probably more more developmental than a Kelvin Banks that's probably ready-made, day one starter at most Power 5 programs. But absolutely, at Sport Talk Center on Twitter, whether they play or not, we need Connor Stroh. This will be for the 2024 season. 2024 season. Am I correct? 2023 season.
Yeah, because that's when Connor Stroh
comes back. Williams. You're talking about 6'7" and 6'8", both 360 pounds. And then you got Sevier Mitchell at 6'5", 335 pounds, and Malik Ogbo getting off the bus together. They say, most teams, when they get off the bus, that team knows what they're going to have to deal with for an entire football game. So absolutely put these guys front and center. Everybody else behind him, you can't even see them because of the size of these individuals. But yeah, big humans matter, man. To Kyle Flood.
And Clint talked about a late offer that went out this week to a kid from East St. Louis, Illinois, Miles McVay, another one, 6'6", 358 pounds. Like, they're going after big people. And like I said, that's what's going to take to win in the SEC. It's big people moving big people. How cool is that?
Travis Acton, I think have y'all noticed how many younger guys were hosting the recruits? And I think that's important because it sets, I think it's a culture thing. Steve Sarkisian recruited this last class, right? So they know what the expectations are. They know what Steve Sarkisian told them before they decided to commit. Now these individuals are telling these newer commits the same thing that Steve Sarkisian told them. So it's all aligned. And I think that's important. You know, it comes down to culture. It comes down to guys that you recruited yourself versus guys that were already established in a program that you took over. And you got to think about it. I don't know what the number is. 60 to 70% was the turnover rate after this last year on the entire football team. Am I correct? It was like some crazy number, right? Like 60, 70% of what the turnover was. And that told you about.
It was right at 50 before you started these, what was it, 7, 8 transfers that you brought in? It was right at 50% of the roster had been turned over. That's why I said 60 to 65% at this point. You'd have to go pretty deep to find players that were part of Tom Herman's, football teams, like in just over a year. Like I said, 22 was Sarkisian's first recruiting class. 23, he's making a splash. I really like, again, the direction that the football team is going, again, with my burnt orange glasses on. But I think every fan kind of feels that way at this point with where we're going in the 23 class, especially coming off the results that we had last year. But it's going to matter. You're gonna have to win football games this fall to continue this momentum that you got in this 23 class. For the guys that are committed, not signed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think three games over where you finished last year is enough to do that. Honestly, I don't think the sky needs to be the limits in year 2 of Steve Sarkisian. And I think that is where, as Texas football fans, and again, this is a conversation we had, this morning, was, Texas fans in Texas football has a standard that is way, way high, that it's not the same standard you're not going to find at every Power 5 program across the country. But I think we have to make sure that we understand the sky is not the limit this year, but Mark's success to me is 3 games over where you finished last year. And that's 8 wins in season and then a 9th win in with a bowl game. And that shows the improvement that continues that momentum. And it wouldn't surprise me if you show that type of improvement, 9 wins, you go from 5 wins to 9 wins, right, with a bowl game victory. It wouldn't surprise me if you don't get a couple of other high 4 stars, maybe a couple of 5 stars that will look at your program within the year before either early signing day probably going into late signing day for those ones that are still available.
Absolutely agree with you. Again, results, you talk to these recruits and they're committed and they're all fighting for the same thing, to change Texas, to put Texas back on the map, to play for championships. And the roster's turned over at about 60% at this point. Now, the coaches that we talked about, who we know how to game plan, know how to scheme, know how to develop, have to do that. And I agree with you. I think that's the number. I think to see positive, to continue this momentum in a positive way, I think that's what has to happen.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that's a good way to end the show today. Been on for hour 4. I got to make sure Jeremy goes to get that Italian food he's been waiting on today. But we appreciate you joining us. We're really, really excited. Like I said, we're going to try to get into 1 to 2 shows a week. We do have some shows that are kind of already scheduled for us that we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks. We'll have a show that's dropping tomorrow. Again, look out for that with us having an interview, a sit down, wherever you want to talk, a Zoom talk with Derek Johnson, University of Texas All-American, 13-year veteran, NFL veteran, 4-time Pro Bowler. The accolades go on and on and on and on and on. So be looking out for that tomorrow. And then on Tuesday, we got a show with national recruiting analyst from Rivals. Nick Harris will be joining us on Tuesday. Not sure exactly if that's going to be a live show or if that's going to be a recorded show yet. More to follow on that. And then we have a couple of other scheduled shows with some we're doing some collaborations here in the near future as well. So kind of stay tuned in that. Please hit that subscribe button if you have not hit that subscribe button. If you have not hit that like button, please hit that like button. Thank you, Mr. Cody Phillips, there for your $5 super chat. Much appreciated. Definitely much appreciated. Hook 'em, brother. Cody Phillips is always in here. He's our stats guy. So at some particular point, Cody will start bringing the stats pretty soon, probably during the season. But definitely have fun tonight. Look forward to next time. If you want to reach out to us in DMs, the best way to do that is to find us on Twitter at TX Football Talk. Am I correct? Right? Like,
yep.
Sub, and hook 'em. But we appreciate y'all as always. Y'all have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and hook 'em.
Hook 'em.